Some asshole with their dog. Damn it, I'm trying to record. So for context, I tried writing this video, got tired of it, then tried recording this video just off the cuff twice, and then I got tired of and hated that. So this is like the fourth time I'm doing the audio for this video, finally scripted, and yes, this has been utter chaos to work on. Thank you for asking. What's up my wild ones, and welcome to a video where I actually speak. Yes, finally, this is my voice. You can unsubscribe. And today, even though nobody cares, I'm going to show you my headcanon mouthwashing designs, because autism is a bitch. And without further dilly-dally, let's get on to the actual designs. Starting off with... Now, I feel like I should first mention some things. Yes, there is some dillying and some dallying. I'm sorry. You can click off. Just kidding, please don't. First, there are a lot of details I put into these designs, some of which I'm not going to explain since I kind of want these designs to speak for themselves in a way, and for the viewer to piece together their meaning. Second, just so it doesn't get annoying, I'm not gonna say in my headcanon every 5 seconds while describing my thought processes with these guys. Assume that whenever I'm talking about them, unless I specify, I'm talking about my headcanon, okay? Finally, yes. These guys were inspired by the Nostromo crew of Alien. What are you gonna do about it? Autism is a bitch times 2. Now, on to the captain himself. Curly, in accordance with something I saw in the wiki mentioning dialogue with British dialect, is from England, but moved to the States when he was a teen. He was born July 26th, making him a Leo. And yes, I gave them zodiac signs. Because I wanted to. He grew up in a pretty well-off, comfortable family, and in essence had a pretty struggle-free childhood. Curly, I imagine, is one of those people who've never heard the word no and is thusly not very acquainted with conflict nor conflict resolution. So his standard procedure for when there's a disagreement is to compromise and have everybody apologize and get along and sing Kumbaya, which obviously doesn't work 100% of the time. I think he and Jimmy represent the two sides of quote-unquote evil, so to speak. Negligent evil and purposeful evil, the former of which is represented by Curly here, and is something he kind of shares with his inspiration, in my headcanon, at least, Captain Dallas of the Nostromo. Now that I think about it, Curly and Jimmy are actually pretty similar to Dallas and Ash, with the obvious exception that Jim isn't a scientist, nor an evil android. Supposedly. Anyways, back on topic. In his college years, Curly earned himself a pilot's license as well as a degree in space travel, which he used in his subsequent time with Pony Express. Fast forward to the crash, I imagine he was left barely alive and barely conscious, entering an almost coma-like state. A state he only barely survived by being injected with stimulants and calmed with painkillers. In my AU, Curly and Jimmy died together as a result of Jim self-destructing the ship, which he can do now thanks to having the captain scanner. I did think about having Curly live in an escape pod or something, kind of like the original Alien, but really, look at this man. There is no fucking way he lived for more than like a day, especially without proper medical attention. And no, being injected with stimulants is not proper medical attention. I know the ending's kind of supposed to be an Alien thing where everyone bar one dies, but like, what life does this torso have? Okay, just kidding, but like, really? I like the idea that Jimmy is so deluded that he ends both he and Curly's lives, either as a I don't want to go without him thing, or as a the pilots go down with the ship kind of thing. I think both works, though, honestly. I don't really have much on his design. It's pretty much his canon one mixed with Dallas's, if you can tell. I still really like it, though, particularly the large collar. I think it makes him look more imposing and important. So imposing and important, in fact, someone decided to copy it. So let's get on to... Okay, in my script, I mistyped Jimmy as Jockme, so we're just gonna run with that. Jockme was born October 3rd, making him a Libra. Contrasting Curly, his early life was one fraught with conflict and a lack of control. His parents always on the edge of divorce, schoolwork always being difficult for him, school in general always being hell for him, and him never having many, if any, friends. This caused him to use at an unfortunately pretty early age, something that only sort of stopped when he met Curly in high school after the latter moved to the States. Curly is Jimmy's only stable relationship relationship, something that caused him to form somewhat of an obsession around him. He holds Curly up as the ideal and therefore tries to replicate him in every way he possibly can, as you can see by his attire. However, unlike Curly, he doesn't really know anything about piloting, and only got his license with Curly's extensive help and his insistence that Jim be his co-pilot. During the main events of the game, he gains a fork scar and a whole hell of a lot of power, which obviously goes to his head. He's obsessed with having control and perceived superiority, and lets the second-in-command designation get to his head all too readily. But at this point, I'm just reciting the events of the game. Also, in case you're wondering, the chain of command aboard the Tulpar goes Curly, Jimmy, Swansea, Anya, and Daisuke. But as I imagine Jim would say, if it ever gets to the point where Daisuke is in charge, the ship is straight fucked. As for his design, well, it's basically just Curly's, but with a popped collar, which I think kind of suits him. Wouldn't you agree? I think what I'm most proud of with him is his scar. I like how it looks, I don't know why. Alright, and now that we've done Jock Me, let's go on to another better character. Anya was born March 12th, making her a Pisces, though I think a December birthday would suit her as well. She grew up always wanting to be a doctor, but struggled even during internships with dealing with patients as a result of her severe emetophobia? Is that how you say it? The fear of vomit, and misophonia, hatred of certain repetitive sounds. I also imagine she was squicked out by blood and serum initially too. As a result, she struggled to keep or even gain positions like these, which was a part of the reason why med schools kept denying her, for lack of experience and such. Despite this, she's the most scientific of the crew, and is the most likely out of all of them to bring specimens aboard to study. Kind of like a less evil Ash or Sarah from The Lost World. Still, she suffers from anxiety that only got worse after the crash, and after everything that happened. And that caused her to become more closed in on herself, as represented by her persistent wearing of covering clothes like sweaters. Speaking on, I probably like my version of... I made a typo, whoopsies. I probably like my version of Anya's design the least out of all of them, just because I love her original one and I feel like mine just naturally pales in comparison. Still though, I think it's nice, especially the simplified sweater. It's cute! And her sneakers too. I don't know why, I just love them. I wanted to give her hokas, since nurses use those in real life, but those were only invented in 2009, while this AU takes place 10 years earlier in a futuristic 1999. Probably should have mentioned that sooner, but I couldn't find a point. Oh well, here's the girl herself. Next on the chopping block, Swansea was born December 29th, making him a Capricorn. Before turning to the world of space travel, he worked on cars and other land vehicles, pretty much his whole life. He's born and raised in Alabama, and as such speaks in a lot, and I mean a lot, of archaic southern slang. He first heard of and joined Pony Express after his second divorce, when he was looking for a job to help him pay for his children and all that. Yes, I headcanon him as twice divorced. He just gives Ron Swanson vibes, I can't help it. His first marriage happened when he was relatively young, like less than 25, and lasted up until around that point. He didn't have any kids then, but he did in his second marriage, the more involved and the longer lasting of the two. It was also after the second divorce where his drinking problem would come back, first rearing its head during the time of his first marriage. I think this, plus his rheumatoid arthritis beginning to flare up around this time, made him feel weak, and pushed him to be up away in space even more, away from the peeping eyes of people, I guess. For the Pony Express, he served begrudgingly as a teacher for new employees, a trend obviously continued with someone we'll get to in just a moment. I realized that typical mechanic gear are jumpsuits, like what a lot of the other characters were wearing in their prior designs, but I feel like Swansea would prefer something less suffocating, if that makes sense. He's one of those people who prefer to work in the element, so to speak, as you can see by all the various oil stains on his clothes. He doesn't really care, as you might be able to infer. The same, however, cannot be said for our last redesign victim of the day. Daisuke, and yes, I'm saying it like that, was born June 11th, making him a Gemini. There's a car outside, hold on. No, it's a motorcycle. Okay. Though his family is from Japan, he was born in the US, specifically California. As such, he definitely has the typical blasé, fun-loving Cali personality, and is what some would consider a delinquent. Kind of like a more chill Bart Simpson, if I'm thinking about it. He skips class, doesn't pay attention, and is just generally pretty arrogant. An underachiever and proud of it. Despite this, his parents can only wish the best for him, furiously encouraging him to take an internship for Pony Express so he could perhaps one day become a captain or a pilot. What I imagine is this world's ideal job, like a doctor or a lawyer. He took this opportunity, and the rest, well, you know it. Dai's design has to be my favorite of the crew. I know some might say he's over-designed, which he kinda is, not gonna lie, but it's on purpose, okay? I figured he'd find the typical uniform garb stifling and would want to customize it with his own flair, e.g. the pins, which I had the most fun with, in case you couldn't tell. Listen, when I get a chance to implement 90s references into something, I'm gonna f***ing take it. And yes, in case you were wondering, that is a Britney Spears pin on his right lapel. He's a girly, what can I say? Anyways, you might also notice the little, okay, big hibiscus flower in his hair. I know I wanted that flower there in his design, and I originally was gonna just make it a pin, as you presumably saw, but I figured it was far too minuscule. Plus, I like the way an actual piece of flora in his hair looks, as well as the added subtle meaning the flower on the right side of his head possesses. In case you were unaware, in Hawaiian culture, a flower on your left ear signifies you're married or otherwise in a relationship, and a flower on your right ear signifies you're single. So with that, you can tell what Dai is here. I know that standard is Hawaiian and not Japanese or Californian, but I mean, California kinda has a relationship with Hawaii, doesn't it? And Daisuke would definitely be into that surfer, beachy lifestyle, methinks. As a last note for his design, I simplified his shirt because damn, drawing a thing always gives me pause. And something I do often for headcanon designs is change elements to make the character easier to draw, because I'm lazy. Though some can say I kind of went over that with all the details I gave him, and that's fair, to be honest. I still really love him though, whatever the case is. Alright, here is everybody, an Alien/Nostromo inspired Topar crew. I really love all these dudes and their designs, and I hope you do too. Comment down below which one's your favorite. I've already explained my favorites, but again, I love all of them, and I hope that you do too, to some extent. Alright, I don't know when I'm gonna upload past this, but this is my first real video, and I'm so excited. And because I don't know how to end this, bye-bye. See you later, my wild ones.